welcome back to the Drive Home Reviews podcast, where I review the movies that I have just seen as I'm driving home from the theater. And as I go into this one, I feel conflicted, very, very conflicted, more so than I have in a long time when I've sat down to review one of these movies, because I think one of the things you have to acknowledge as a film critic, be it amateur or professional, is you need to understand that not everybody likes every kind of movie. And even if you try to expand your horizons and see movies that you wouldn't ordinarily see and allow yourself to be surprised, it still means that there's always a cutoff. You know, one of the film critics that inspired me to start doing this back in the day clearly does not like the Scream franchise. That is, he has made that very clear. So then my question is, why does he keep reviewing the Scream movies? Because clearly you don't like them. Clearly they're not for you. And if that's the case, then fine. You know, again, not everybody has to like everything. But why do it? You know? And I've kind of had that debate with myself multiple times throughout the course of this series. And anybody who's listened or watched for a long period of time will know, and sing along if you know the words, I am not a fan of horror movies. There are certain films I just do not enjoy. And so I tend to avoid them. Now, I am happy to say that I have broken out of that a bit more through this series, and I've seen movies that I otherwise would not have seen and have actually enjoyed them. Things like Ready or Not, Last Night in Soho, which was one of my which was my favorite movie of that year. These are movies I would not have seen. Abigail, another great example. So I'm happy to say that I've grown a little bit, but the simple fact of the matter is that there is still, when it comes to horror movies, there is still a line for me of things I just don't like. And I acknowledge that because I understand that other people do. My best friend in the world, my best friend of 30 years, my brother, he loves movies like this. He loves things like Saw and, you know, these brutal horror films. He digs them, and that's great, you know? So he'd probably be a better advocate for this film than I'm going to be. So I always say that my reviews are always my opinion, and encourage you to, you know, make your own. And if you agree with me, great. If you don't, that's fine. But I really do feel like, more so than any movie I have reviewed in a long time, I really do have to put up that disclaimer that I'm going to give you my opinions on this, but be aware that they are coming through a filter of, this is not a movie for me. This is not the kind of movie I enjoy. I did not have a good time watching this movie. It's not a movie I wanted to go back and watch again. It's not a movie where there was anything in it that made me decide to kind of overcome the issues I have with the genre and power through, you know? So I think this review is going to come across fairly negative, but I must reiterate that this is coming from my perspective, and your perspective and your tolerance and your tastes may vary from mine, and it may be perfect for you. So I know that's a lot of clarification, but I do feel like it's really necessary, because I can see how people who like those kind of horror movies would really dig this. Because it's not... There's some interesting things going on with it, legitimately. So let's talk about this. But before we get into it, let's just... Let's make sure we know what we're talking about. So in case you haven't heard, which I did find it funny when I asked my best friend about this movie, he said he'd never heard of it. And, you know, advertising for movies is so different these days. But anyway, so this is a movie about a family in Hawaii that, through very quick opening credit montage, we reveal that their mother adopted a baby chimpanzee and taught it sign language, named it Ben. The mother passed away. Ben is still living with the family. The oldest daughter comes back for a vacation from school, bringing with her cannon fodder, friends, who you basically, when you're introduced to these characters in these kind of movies, you really are just looking at them going, okay, who's going to die for? What's the order here? They could not be more obvious. And that's not a fault of the movie. That's just the genre. But they come back to Hawaii, to the house for a vacation. Unbeknownst that Ben the chimpanzee has eaten a mongoose that was carrying rabies, and Ben contracts it and goes literally ape shit. That's the whole reason I did this review, is to use that line. And starts stalking the partying teenagers in the house. And, chaos ensues. You kind of fill in the blanks for yourself. So right off the bat, I do have to say that I do feel like this is a really clever idea, and really one that hasn't been done very often or at all, which is really weird to me when you think about it, because in the animal goes berserk kind of horror movie or adventure film, one of the big problems that you will eventually run into is when does the animal stop behaving in a way that is logical for an animal to behave? Case in point, of course, the creme de la creme is Jaws. Watching that movie, even all the way up to the end, you can pretty much understand why the shark is behaving the way it is. It's just reacting. It's being a predator. It's not hunting down people. It doesn't have a master plan. It's just, it sees something in the water and it eats. And even as the movie progresses, you can just make the argument that from its perspective, it's being hunted and it's defending itself. Now, obviously, in the later sequels, starting as early as Jaws 2, they start with the shark doing things that it wouldn't make any sense for a shark to do. And then by the time you get to Jaws 4, it's basically a swimming velociraptor where it's setting traps and that's kind of the Achilles heel of animal attack kind of horror movie. Another good one that doesn't get a lot of play, Ghost in the Darkness, where the lions are behaving in a manner that is not typical of lions, and that's kind of the whole point of the story. So it's kind of funny that they've never done, or at least not to my knowledge, or at least not for a long time, a killer ape film.
So we put up with centuries of bellhop costumes, little t-shirts that say Zippy on them, badminton on ice, roller skates, cigars in our mouths. Lancelot Link alone set us back 100 years.
Because this movie really strikes the perfect balance with the rabies inciting incident of it's an animal existing purely on instinct, but it's still a very intelligent animal And so you can see it problem solved, and you can see it come up with ways to get at people, and it actually does make a lot of sense. And for the most part, Ben the ape does behave as you could see an ape actually behaving. There's nothing really in this, with one minor exception I'll talk about here in a second, where you're watching it going, okay, I can't see the ape doing that. It's like you can, because they have, and they do. And they get a lot of mileage out of that. They get a lot of mileage out of what can this creature reasonably get away with. And they come up with some really good set pieces. Probably the best part of the movie, there's this really great sequence where two of the girls are trying to sneak into the house to get their phones, and they're hiding in the closet from Ben, and Ben hears them or senses them or smells them, and he's getting very close, and it's this really intense sequence of they're in a corner, and he's sensing, he's seeing, he's getting, it's a really well done sequence, really well done, kind of the definition of edge of your seat kind of stuff. I really, that sequence had me going. That's about as engaged as I got. But you know what made me disengage? Ironically, it was nothing nothing violent or gory. What made me disengage from that moment is he gets right up to them and can't smell them. And I actually did have to look it up. I was like, how good is a chimpanzee's sense of smell? And according to the online research, I say, like I did an intense study of this, that an ape's sense of smell is really, really powerful. So how could he be right up on them and not smell them? That made me kind of check out. But that's the problem when you do something really well. If there's something in it that isn't done well, it sticks out. There's some other stuff that they do that's really clever and I really liked. So for instance, the father of our two main girls is played by Academy Award winner Troy Custer, who is deaf. And they have some fun with that aspect when he kind of comes back to the house and is looking for them, and we, the audience, see Ben behind him, and to anybody else there'd be a warning because there'd be sound. But I love the movie goes completely silent because we're seeing things and hearing things from his perspective. We know that the ape is there, but he can't hear it. That's really good suspense. That is fantastic. Yeah, and in those moments, once again, I was like, oh shit. That's when it had me. That's when the movie really locked in on me. So what didn't work for me? Well, I want to break this into two categories. I'm going to talk about actual, as best I can be, actual neutral responses, things that I noticed in this movie that I don't think worked from a filmmaking perspective or a storytelling perspective. And then I'll talk about what didn't work for me just kind of personally, my personal taste. So there are some little things. I guess some of them would be nitpicks, I guess, if you really want to get technical about it. For instance, the plot device that every single one of these, I don't even know, are these Gen Z now? I can't keep track of the generation names, but these modern day kids who are glued to their phone, that every single one of them would plug them inside the house, away from them at the same time. That does not, and I see these kids in my classroom every day. They will ride their devices until the battery literally shuts down on them. 2% they'll still have it, So the fact that all of them decided to plug their phones inside and then go out to the pool and not have their phones near them, sorry, that was just, that I didn't believe any of that. That was a moment of, this is something we're doing as a setup that actually wouldn't make sense in any other context.
Oh yeah, it's raining cinematic payoff.
Okay, so that's a nitpick. One of the other things that I didn't like about this movie is, and I understand that this is par for the course for a movie like this, that when we, like I said, when we introduce our characters, they're stock. And that's okay. It's fine to be a stock character in a horror movie because, yeah, they're there to be cannon fodder. That's their goal. So I don't have a problem with that. But what I do have a problem with is our main characters are estranged sisters because the mom died and dad is working and the oldest one went to college and didn't come back, and there's a wedge between them, blah, blah, fucking blah. How many times have we seen this? How many times, and especially in horror movies where they do this, where it's usually the mom is dead, the horror, everybody gets on Disney movies for how many of them have dead moms. Look at the horror movie genre and how many of them have dead moms that have caused a rift or an estrangement in the family. And it was just so hackneyed. It's like, okay, I could understand it if we were going to start building to a character piece, but we really don't. Like, once the movie kicks in, and it kicks in really early, like it does not waste a lot of time with setup. It's all survival. And any family trauma, any disagreements, any wedges, none of it matters and none of it makes any sense. So setting up this very forced, drama between the sisters and the dad, which doesn't even really pay off. Like, the sisters are fairly good with each other again pretty quick, so it's not even really explored. It's like, why even do it? It would have actually made the situation more tense and more tragic if they weren't estranged, if they were a loving family and there wasn't any drama and it was just hey, you're coming home, I've missed you too. Because then when the terrible things happen, we feel more for them. We don't feel more for them just because they have a strained relationship. Nobody who goes and sees these things is sitting there and watching them going, oh, I do hope that through this trauma they manage to heal their broken relationship. Nobody gives a shit. So why do it? Why truck that out? And that leads me to the big thing in terms of storytelling that I have a real problem with this movie, is the character of Ben, the chimpanzee, who has apparently lived with this family his entire life. They treat him like a little brother. We don't get really a whole lot of time with them, with Ben. We don't see how he is actually a part of their family, and he is not just a pet, and he's not, just kind of a sideshow to them, that they love him like a brother. We don't get a lot of that in there. We get some cursory scenes, it's very, very basic. It's like the bare minimum that you can do. And then, of course, everything goes to shit. And I think the movie would have had more of an emotional punch. The scares would have been more traumatic. And I think audience engagement for me would have been much higher if we saw the relationship that they had with him. You want to know why Old Yeller still haunts people? Because The whole movie is a boy and his dog, and we see the relationship. And we see the bonding, and, you know, everybody loves their pet. And then when he has to do what he has to do, that's what makes it tragic. But we don't get any of that here. And so therefore, when Ben sadly succumbs to this thing outside of his control, we're told that there's a relationship, but we don't actually see a lot of examples of it. It's very bare minimum. It's very, you know, here's a quick scene. Yay, we love Ben. Uh-oh, Ben's a killer, and now shit's gotten real. On the subject of Ben, before we get into this last bit, I do have to say one of the things I really appreciated is that Ben is not CG. He's not motion capture. He is a practical on the set actor in a suit in a very very complex and sophisticated facial piece that does a lot of expressions. It's old school Jim Henson stuff, you know. And big ups to the actor Michael Torres Unta who is in the suit, just doing a remarkable job. And I think for the most part, the cinematography and the directing really works well, because it's smart to shoot around, again, using the Jaws reference, shoot around the shortcomings. Like, if they hold on Ben too long, you kind of notice his legs are a little too long in proportion to his arms. You know, chimpanzees tend to have shorter legs and longer arms, but here you can see that his legs and arms are fairly even, and that's not the physiology of a chimp. But they cut around it so much that you notice it for a second, and then it's gone, and then you're like, okay, you know. The only downside with the suit is that the headpiece in the back, the hair tends to stick up a little bit, and it really does kind of draw attention to the fact that it is a headpiece. Like, I don't know why they didn't comb that down in the back to make it, you know, drape over the neck a little bit. They did the old Hanna-Barbera thing of having him wear a shirt so that you don't have to worry about seeing the neck connect to the shoulders and the difference in physiology there. But with that back piece kind of sticking up, it really does draw the eye a lot of the time. And you're like, oh, there's the headpiece. So, those are the things that I can say objectively that I didn't like about the movie, and that didn't work for me about the movie. And my other major issues, again, are just me. This is my personal taste, so please take this for what it is worth. One of the reasons I do not like horror movies is I do not like torture. I do not like blood. I do not like gore. It is not something I appreciate. Now, you may ask, well, didn't you say you liked Abigail and Ready or Not? Yeah, I did. And you know why I could get through that? Because the gore in those is so over the fucking top. You know, it's so cartoony that you can just go, okay, that's you know, that you know, it's a movie, it's a special effect.
Just repeat to yourself, it's just a show. I should really just relax.
But movies that really focus on real pain, on real stomach-turning acts that really try to recreate them, I do not like. I can't. And this movie goes in that direction. It is that. And the acts of violence are really violent. Even things like Ben breaking a girl's finger is really I guess we should give a lot of props to the special effects, the makeup, the sound design, because it is it's really good. It really is. So they did their job and made it feel pretty real. So it's good filmmaking. But for me, that does not draw me in. I understand that some people, they're fine with it. They have a much higher threshold. You know, again, people who like Saw or Hostel or some of that stuff, you can get into it. I cannot. It doesn't do it for me. It alienates me. It pushes me out of the movie. It's an unpleasant experience, and I don't normally watch movies to have an unpleasant experience, you know. So those things do not work for me as an audience member. And this film, that's the kind of horror movie it is, and as such, it's not for me. I did not enjoy it. I did not like it. And I can admit the things that worked and the things that were good, but it's not a movie that I ever want to see again. If there's a sequel, I probably will not partake. And yeah, for me, it was a very unpleasant film. So yeah, and again, I urge you, take all my critiques, take every critique from everybody with a grain of salt. Make up your own mind. If it's your thing, if it's your bailiwick, then more power to you. Congratulations. I'm glad there's a movie that you enjoy. But I cannot personally recommend it. So that I'm trying to be as fair as I can be, and that's about as fair as I can be. So that's my opinion. So final grade for Primate. This is a hard one. I have honestly, this is partially, I've actually taken longer to review this one than I have a lot of the others because of this reason of trying to separate my gut reaction from, legitimate criticism, and trying to be as even-handed as I can. So I hope I've succeeded in that. I don't know. So the final grade, God, this is so hard to do. But in the end of the day, I have to go with my gut. I have to judge it by my opinion, and my opinion of it is that for all the good filmmaking on display and the smart choices, it was an unpleasant experience watching it, and I never want to repeat it. So I have to give this one an F. I really do. And I feel, it's weird to say that I feel bad about it, because I do think there are good things there, and I do think with the right audience, this will be a smash and people will really enjoy it. I'm just not that audience. So there's my opinion. Take it for whatever it's worth. Okay? Yeah. Okay, well, what a downer. But I appreciate you all listening, and I appreciate you coming with me on this little journey. And again, if you're curious, go check it out and make your own choices. Always the best advice I can leave you with. That, and saying thanks for coming along, thanks for joining me, and as always, drive safe, and I will see you at the movies.